Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Monday in the Riv. What a weekend we had. You should have followed our advice and never got near the tee.
That's right.
4 hours. Now they're running bus lines. What a catastrophe. We got to start. We normally start a little national stuff, but
yeah, but Carol Fiola said this is growing pains. This is growing pains, according to
Carol yeah, it's growing. I mean, they've never ever had a tee run, right? The tee's been around for 50 years or more. And
been around for 100 years.
Yeah, well, whatever. The guy's been stuck in Boston
ever since.
He'll never return on the old line. Look, these people. Listen, Carol Fiola is a politician who wanted the waterfront for her crew.
That's right.
They wanted to get the ability to control all the land, ignore variances, ignore zoning ordinances, and get whatever they wanted and make themselves rich, and they're doing so. Listen, we told you so. We told you on the Durfee building that we wouldn't be paid up. We told you on the charter sucked. We told you the MBTA was a shit show. They had $400 billion in the hole. It's a disaster. Anything the public runs, the only thing worse than that's the bullet train in California that cost $200 billion, and they've got 1,800 feet in 20 years, and it never ran. So exactly. Listen, they told you that this was going to run. It doesn't run well any other place. Listen, I've been on that tee longer than Carol Fiola was advocating for it, okay? We used to ride the tee to go to arbitrations in Boston all the time. The thing is a mess. There's always delays. There's always stuff. They can't get anything. They can't get a crew. You mean to tell me you don't know you have employees? They can't get dragged. What people were complaining, 4 hours on a bus to get here. And listen, they don't care. This is just political rhetoric to keep you not realizing that they sold you another bill of goods. Another bill of goods. This is going to be the panacea. It is going to fix Fall River, just like the battleship Massachusetts was going to fix Fall River. The carousel, or as we used to like to call it, Lincoln Park, the Derby horses. We were going to get thousands of people down here to ride the Derby horses. We didn't. Big Mamie, the HMS Bounty, calling it a gateway city. This is a blue-collar city. No jobs, no state.
Fiola said we were going to get?
Well, Fiola was the guy who was advocating for the carousel. And
how many people did you think we were going to get?
Unfortunately, I gave that copy of his report to
Tom Kozak. And it got lost.
Who was now passed away. Yep. And I never got it back. When he was telling I was on the board of Heritage State Park at the time, that we were going to get 500,000 tourists a year down
I know. Never made fruition.
Listen, if bullshit was bricks, they could build a chimney to the moon and have bricks left over. I mean, these people are typical. They're politicians. Anything they say has absolutely no relevance, and it's not the truth. I mean,
right.
they never tell the truth. It's all propaganda. It's like the illegal alien that they like to use these little semantic tricks. They're gonna use this semantic trick. He was abducted. Yeah, he had 2 judges deport him. He's a known member of MS-13. He's got virtually 2 domestic abuse charges from his wife. And these yo-yos that are on, this isn't an 80-20 issue either. This is like a 95-5 issue. This guy is an absolute, he's a thug. He doesn't belong here. And that yo-yo senator, Holland, weeping, let him weep. And that's the new talking point that the Democrats, by the way, see, do you notice that once they get a talking point, they all say it? James Carville said it. They say it. If you don't speak up now to bring them home, there'll be no one left to speak for you. Well, you know me. I am a student of history. That is a travesty to use that. Half of them who are using that have no idea where that came from. So I'm going to tell you guys, just in case you don't know. But most of you got at least a functional brain cell, so you actually probably do know where this is, because I've talked about it.
I have one, according to parties unnamed, I have 1 brain cell if I'm lucky.
That's right. Well, this came from Pastor Martin Nehemiah. He's got an umlaut over the O, which means he was a German. This is what a travesty, using this for an illegal criminal alien. It would be in order if you were trying to get a Nazi back here to put in prison. But this is about putting people in. And I'm going to read this verbatim. And in case you want to see it someday, if you go to Boston, between the Oyster House and Faneuil Hall, there is a Holocaust monument. And this is on it. It's engraved on it. This is what he said. First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Well, that's a different context, people. In case you people, you like Democrats, it shows how totally delusional and alternate universe they live in. To compare that, when they were rounding up people because of their ethnicity, their unions, they wanted to break the unions, they wanted to control the propaganda. They took everybody that wasn't an Aryan. Hitler wanted to have the Aryan race purified. To compare that with somebody they should be rounding up. Let me tell this to the Democrats out there. You morons are supposed to be rounding these people up. They're criminals. They're raping, murdering, killing people. They're supposed to be rounded up and stuck in a prison somewhere. This yo-yo, whatever 15 different Spanish names he has, belongs in jail for life, probably. He's an MS-13 from El Salvador. He's back home where he belongs, and kudos to the president of El Salvador. CJ, you were muted. But that pisses me off when they use that
The country president of El Salvador said he wasn't releasing him because he's a criminal.
Yeah, and he also said, how would he release him? He'd have to smuggle him back into the United States. Yeah.
Good.
But, I just had a great thought. How about we let them, have them release him and have that senator come back with him and then arrest the senator and him for aiding and abetting an illegal coming into the country illegally. Then you can lock up that yo-yo senator. And by the way, that senator from Maryland, who like to refer to him as a Maryland man, besides being caught with 8 other people who used his address and stuff, did not say one word about the murder of Rachel Lauren, mother of 5. Did not. She's from Maryland. Her mother was on, gave an impassioned speech. It's a travesty. So listen, but if we start with the Democrats in their hallucinogenic world, we'll be on all day. So you want to hit some of our topics like the great T, the great promises of everything. And
well, I do need to address something, which I spoke to you briefly before we went on the air.
Okay.
Antonio Teixeira, who is a civil activist, sent, I guess, a letter or wrote a letter to Ken Fiola about the Fall River Line Pier, which I discussed this weekend in the Weekend Flush. And I said, corruption, corruption, corruption. According to the response from Ken Fiola, the $174,000 was paid to Bristol County Economic Development Corporation to provide services for the state pier. He maintains that the Fall River Line Pier is not a government entity. It does not receive money from the city of Fall River and does not receive money from the state. Yet, the Fall River Line Pier is the state pier. The state pier is owned by the state. And the Fall River Line Pier is supposed to pay the state money for some of it, what's left over, the profit, or whatever you want to call it. And remember, Paul Coogan put him on. He was almost bankrupt before Paul Coogan came in. These are all political favors and paybacks. That's what this is.
Well, listen, look, here we go again with the deflections. This is their great con. Kenny Fiola's thing has always been, I don't have to tell you how much money I make. I don't have to tell you anything about what I do, but I'm making hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars from all these deals down there on the waterfront. And we don't have to tell you how much we make because we're private citizens.
That's right.
But you do. Because the problem with this is, we saw, you read them off, you had them in the flush, you talked about the corruption. We talked about people voting on giving money to entities that they had a financial interest in, which is illegal.
Right.
You cannot do that. Okay, you cannot do that. That is it's a breach of your fiduciary responsibility. All those people were put on by a public entity, i.e., the mayor of the city of Fall River, the city of Fall River,
by the city council.
So when you have checks that are not numbered, when you have money that is not accounted for, when you have people voting on a committee to give money to businesses that they're involved in and have a financial interest in, we all know about the ethics law. This is their workaround. Kenny Fiola's been ducking this since he was called years ago. How much money are you making? You remember what his answer was? I don't have to tell you because I really don't work for the city of Fall River. I'm not a public employee. Well, Kenny, you and your Democratic rep wife, you're always yelling for Trump to show his tax forms. Show your tax forms.
That's right.
Let's see yours. How much money have you made? What does he get? How much does he get every time he closes a deal down there on the waterfront? And he's the guy that closes all the deals. What's he get? He's not working for $20. He's not working for $100 either. And how much financial interest do the people who he has a direct link with involved in this. This is something the FBI should be looking into, because this is a public-private partnership. So it is a de facto public entity.
I'm here.
Okay.
Not going anywhere.
They just look a little different with that big white dot with you in the middle.
Yeah, I know.
There you go. There you go. But, this is the Coogan administration. 6 years of hiding everything, deflecting everything, talking about everything, except in the abstract. Paul was on the radio again, and I heard that they did a show on, in the Second World War, they had Tokyo Rose in the Pacific. We got Fall River Flow on Saturday and Sunday over at We Suck at Radio. Propaganda minister. The propaganda minister. Let's see what the chairman says here. Yeah. Well, we're all going to, if we did that, but that's the problem. They have no accountability. We have a state where the Democrats have run it. I don't know.
And if I'm correct, Chet, correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
Didn't you have a point in time where you exposed the city for backdating checks?
Yes. Yeah. When we had this forensic audit done of the healthcare system, the city, and I have it, and if anybody wants to say that's a lie, I will bet you $10,000 right now on the air. I can prove it because we have the court stenographer's records.
That's right.
They backdated checks. They had no idea where the money that they were moving around in various accounts, and there were numerous accounts, 25 or 30 of them. They had no idea where it was going. It's still like that today. That happened in 1991. It happened again in 2008, 2016. And in the interim, we had 25 other insurance accounts, not healthcare insurance, but general insurance accounts that had been dormant for 25 years, in spite of the fact that there's a statute that demands an audit every year of those accounts.
Well, we have an audit, but again, we were told by a former auditor, we don't do an audit. We do a reconciliation.
Yeah, he actually referred to it in two contexts. Both he and the treasurer during that under oath, they said it was a reconciliation, and in another cross-examination, they referred to it as a recreation.
Right.
So in other words, what they did was they just took the final number and acted like it was a crossword puzzle and just made the numbers fit. They had to come out with that number.
He makes his budget.
That's kind of, exactly. But, we keep talking about this subject, but the only way we're going to fix this is get to the polls. Yeah, minutes for all those meetings. Well, I will guarantee you, without being ever accused of being Sherlock Holmes, that the minutes of the meetings that are missing are the minutes when the board members were voting to give money to themselves and their companies.
But according to Ken Fiola, he's not a governmental entity. And he receives no money from the state.
What's the name of that company that has the help? Somebody, one of you viewers might know it. Help us out here. Isn't there a commercial about talking about investing money and saying we're a fiduciary and it's the clients? Well, they are fiduciaries. They are not absolved of fiduciary duty because they're in the private sector. And in this case, it's not really the private sector. It's the pseudo-private sector.
That's right.
It's like I said, it's a de facto public-private partnership.
And they're still operating without a contract or lease with the state.
That's right. Well, if your wife is a state rep, nobody pays attention. You can do whatever you want. Yep.
I guess so.
You just make a phone call to Boston. You know what they'll say? Whoops. Sorry, we made a mistake, which is what they said in 91, by the way. We had a couple of $1 million that they'd embezzled and put in their account and then said, They forgot it was ours, even though statutorily it's supposed to go directly into our account, but they did it. And when they got caught, they said, whoops, it was a mistake. And they had to pay us back with interest. But again, we were fighting about health care.
That's right. Yep.
But the city should have actually done, the city council at the time should have demanded a full investigation of the entire financial department of the city of Fall River. Because as I said, I have case law from Cornell University Law School that clearly states that public sector fiduciaries have far more liability than private sector. Private sector's got plenty of liability when you handle money. But public sector, because they're handling taxpayer money, has by court decision, it is said there is an greater liability for fiduciary irresponsibility. So, but again, what do we have to do? Vote them out. We had 49,000, nearly 50,000 people vote in the last election instead of 12 or 14,000. If 12 or 14,000 come out in November, we're going to have the same bozos. We have exactly, we've seen what happens on a council. And speaking of the council, Tuesday night, what's on the agenda, CJ?
The police chief.
Didn't Paul say he was going to go through a process?
Yes, he did.
Oh, but Paul never lies.
Nope. Like the hit and run.
And what did he say when he was on television about, or on radio, when he was asked about, I never said that. I said it could be, it should be, it would be.
He
just
said
like
that in the school committee meeting to Colin Dias and Kevin Aguiar. And Sue Nader, over the weekend, with Colin Dias, who was on the phone with her, turned around and said, maybe I should get, under the Freedom of Information Act, copies of your phone records. Well, let me teach you a little something, Miss Nader. You can only get his phone records if he uses them primarily for city business. If they're used for his private business, his private life, they're off the deck. Can't touch them. I called Colin and said, do like I've told to other public officials. Get a city phone. This way, they want the records, they've got them. But it's amazing what they do when they try to deflect.
Well, Fall River Flo is my new nickname for that propaganda hour is. She was the one that, remember when they were talking about us being thrown off the air, and Alan Zarek told her on the air, they can say anything they want. There's a Supreme Court decision. They're talking about politicians.
That's right.
And her response to that was, I don't care. I would still sue them.
Right.
And she told that to Laura Washington. And that's why we said, please sue us, because we're kind of counter-sue you morons.
We've caused such drama in this city. Was a big no. You're right.
So they lied.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what's going to happen with this? We invoke the Terry Sullivan law. Keep your mouth shut. Keep your head down. They'll be on to something else later on, and you get away with it.
That's right.
So if you did that, or I did that, or any private citizen or any other public employee who didn't fit would do it, it's kind of like Donald Trump. Everything he does is we want to impeach him. He doesn't pay attention. He's wrecking the Constitution. Does my memory serve me correctly, or didn't Joe Biden, when the Supreme Court ruled on the forgiveness of student debt, say,
you can't do it?
Big middle finger to you. Right. I'm doing it anyway.
All right, that's exactly
Did
what
they,
you know
did
the
they
Democrats
impeach
don't talk
him?
about that.
Wait a minute. Yeah, and he did that on numerous occasions where the
That's right.
Supreme Court made a ruling and Joe Biden said, I don't care what they do, I'm going to do it anyway.
That's
So
right.
he ruled his first year by fiat. So this is the problem. You can't have two sets of rules. Can't have two sets of rules. Donald Trump is not looking to eliminate the Constitution by abiding by it. I don't care when the law was passed. If the law is still there,
It's
he's
civil law.
using the Alien Act. Illegal alien. Oh, you can't do that. I don't care if that thing was written during Hammurabi's period. As a matter of fact, I wish if we were using Hammurabi's code, because we should, because there'd be a lot of Democrats that are no longer with us because of Hammurabi's code. But it's just like everything else. They have a convoluted perspective of everything. They talk about fairness and this, and we're going to wreck the Constitution. And January 6th, you got three or four people walking around with buffalo horns on their head. The only person that got injured seriously was an unarmed female who was shot by an armed officer who had already had a gun issue, and nothing happened. They actually gave him a medal, I think. And they keep talking about January 6th, January 6th, January 6th. It's Pearl Harbor. It's this, it's that. While they were doing that, Democrats were burning down cities, causing hundreds of billions of dollars worth of damage. They killed a few people and injured a few people. And then when they tried to kill somebody else and he defended himself, he was the criminal again. So the moral of that story is, don't pay attention to them. As that psychiatrist they have once in a while on, I see him once in a while when I'm watching Fox. He basically says something that's very true. You can't argue with delusionary people.
No, you can't.
They're sick. You can't deal with them, and it's totally pointless. So the only way to fix them is to get rid of them. Now, get rid of them. Throw them all out of office. I don't know how it's going to happen in this state, but I would love to see. Love to see Pocahontas gone. My favorite Markey, the guy who ran on term limits 120 years ago. He's been here for 120 years, and he ran on term limits. I guess his term limit was until he dies. Your term has to be limited to when you're not considered legally dead. But this is the kind of people that represent you. And they, and Bernie Sanders, who's a multi-millionaire, you notice he doesn't use billionaires anymore because he's pretty close to a billionaire. Now he's got the new buzzword, oligarchy. The oligarchy. Yes. We can't, because that's kind of a euphemism in a way, because then you don't really identify what creates an oligarch. So that's something that's not really finite when you look at a definition of a word. So but it's like defining Paul's 6 years. If you listen to him, we're doing great. We got a T that in the first 2 weekends didn't run for crap.
And now doesn't run at all.
Run for crap. Nobody has, even to this day, from his administration, has admitted that the T is a total and utter disaster. Everybody in the state knows that except Fall River and New Bedford. Propaganda machine. We suck at radio. Oh, we're going to fix it. You're going to fix it. And how many people are going to take the train anyway? They already know that it's a disaster. And you could ride a bike up there faster than they got there on a weekend because, I'm telling you, they would have been better off hitchhiking home.
Yep. Makes for an interesting time.
Everything is fine. This is the Democratic Party. Everything was good. The borders were closed. Education's great. Everything's looking rosy. No crime, even though you could, because no crime because you had to steal more than $1,000 to even be charged. But they were living in Valhalla over here, the Norse heaven, but they lie about everything. But the real people realize it. That's why Trump got in. I hate to tell you this, yo-yos, but the fact is that the average person realizes that you people are full of crap. And Paul Coogan is just slinging it again, going for another term. The guy that said, I'm going to be in one term to stabilize the city, now wants to become a millionaire.
He already is. He already is.
I know. Well,
in my mind, he already is.
Let's remind everybody what he said. First term, I'm going to be transparent, which he's covered up virtually everything.
Everything.
And why is the police chief coming down again? He agreed that he was going to go through a process. His process is to give the finger to the council, send it back to the council, and have our resident flip-flopper, and we know who she is.
I have no problem saying who it is. It's Linda Pereira.
Yeah, well, we all know it. Everybody knows it. Right. She's gonna flip, and then they're gonna turn around.
She's doing a favor for her friend, who's got a kid on the police department who wants to maintain good graces with the new police chief. This is all political favors. And this is why we need to institute in our charter, when it comes up for review, a 2-term limit on elected officials. That would be school committee, city council, and mayor. And I know people say 2 terms is too short. But look at the damage Paul's done in 2 terms. Look at the damage he's done in 3. Can you imagine if he got 4?
Well, look,
my head's going to explode.
But he told them he was going to go through the process. The people wanted a process. And like I said, it's no disrespect to this candidate now. The fact is that after the change in police chiefs, like babies change diapers, and people are already saying, look, since the second one, they were saying, we've got to go out of the city. We've got to get somebody in here that doesn't know anybody. Even our illustrious governor, did it to the Mass State Police. She brought in an out of state head of state police.
Nope, and that's why Linda doesn't deserve to be reelected. She flips all the time, and neither does Andrew.
But the problem is the people want a process. There should have been a process. But they're so arrogant, they won't even pretend there's a process. They could have got a fixed process. We've seen them before. But they won't even do it. Paul's doing what he did with the Bank Street Armory, stamping his feet and saying, my way, I got to get my way. I don't care what you say. And the legislative branch keeps saying, well, there's nothing we can do about it. Well, there isn't anything you do about it when you got Brad Kilby and Paul Hart that I don't even know if they're actually there. They might be like AI because all they do is hit the button up in the 6th floor and they go, yes, for everything. Once in a while, Brad will make some inane remark. Those two are automatic. And they're a disgrace to their office. They're not representing the city. They're representing the mayor. They work for the mayor. As do the majority of the council. You can't have that. Right. You cannot have a city council. It's not the city's council's job to agree with the mayor. It's the city council. They're a separate form of separate branch of government. They're a legislative branch. They're there to look at the money. They spend the money. And when they say there's nothing they can do about it, that's an absolute categorical lie.
That's right.
They can. They do not have to fund anything he sends down. The mayor proposes, the city council disposes.
But as you remember, or maybe you don't remember, when the budget came down and the city council rejected the budget, Paul didn't say anything. And he said, rejecting the budget is not an action. Remember that?
Yeah.
And he got his budget approved because of the 45-day rule.
Yep.
Which is bull.
Well, he did the same thing in the retirement board. He had his two stooges can the fifth member who'd been there for 27 years or 26 years since we had a fifth member, because he didn't vote the right way, and then he could appoint the fifth member. And again, it's the process. The fifth member we have now seems fairly reasonable. It's not about him. It's about the process. Same thing with the police chief. We needed a process. The process was Paul Coogan picked him, and so far he's 0 for 3.
Isn't that the truth?
So we're going to use the same. Isn't that the definition of insanity, CJ?
Yes,
correct me if I'm not wrong. Repeating the same thing and expecting a different result.
Outcome. That's what former voters think. We'll put the
Coogan
same
picks him. We go down. Coogan's pretty good at that, isn't he? Let's look at Malone. Yeah, he hired Matt Malone after he'd been bounced out of Swampscott under the threat of a lawsuit for sexual harassment, went to Brockton and got thrown out of Brockton again with the threat of lawsuits again on him. And Paul Coogan appoints him, and that council, except for Kevin Aguirre, but he had a mole. There were two, if you remember, that's how he got back on the city council. Remember, there was a mole in the opposition. There was a two-man opposition. It was Kevin Aguirre, and you remember who it was? Paul Hart.
Yep.
But that was his spy, his double agent.
Right.
So he knew he was calling Paul and telling him everything, and that's now. Then he runs for council. Paul said, "Yeah, you're doing a good job now. You fronted for me here, and we covered it up." I mean, Coogan has not made a brilliant decision in this city in 6 years. How many CFOs have we gone through? How many people in the auditing office have we gone through? And they keep telling you we got to keep paying more and more. These people get in. They give them whatever they want for a paycheck, and they still don't stay. Or they're totally incompetent, and they got to get rid of them. Oops. Well, hopefully Joe Camara can control that meeting a little bit better than he did on that meeting. That meeting was totally off the rails. I have never seen a meeting, and I've seen some bad ones there, but I have never seen a meeting that got so out of control so quickly, and the chair he didn't have a clue on how to put it out, because he doesn't want to, you're the chair, you got to do what you got to do. I even told one of the police officers, because we were sitting over there waiting for the retirement board to come up, and he was even saying, "What a mess." I said, "Well, it's the chair. The chair's got to handle this." I said, "Listen, I had meetings. I had to use a whip and a chair. That's why you have a sergeant at arms. You don't need a sergeant at arms here. You got police officers. So you just tell them, remove the people."
What's interesting about all this is that one thing. They have to make a motion to reconsider because they rejected it at the last meeting. So Linda would have to make a motion to reconsider because she was on the winning side.
Yep.
Okay, now.
But the second does not have to be on the prevailing side.
Correct. The second doesn't need to be on the prevailing side. But if they've already got the votes locked down, which it sounds like they do, why bother going through the whole process? Which means they may not even call the chief in front of the city council. They may say, "The hell with it. Just pass it." We've seen that before.
That's true. That's true. Although maybe she might want to be there to I don't know, maybe they've got some kind of thing that Paul's going to swear her into something. I don't know. But the thing is that, this is what they did with the fifth member. They got the guy they got the fifth member to make the motion to reconsider because he was on a prevailing side, and then they fired him. So Are you getting something on YouTube, which
Yeah.
I still don't have, even though it's up.
Patrick Higgins is making comments, but we've got a few comments on YouTube. Some Stevie B asked, is anyone running against Coogan instead of Carlos? Besides Carlos, excuse me. So I said, yeah, Boomer Amarov. The other guy, Vandal, I don't even want to talk about because I don't know who the hell he is. Patrick says, who's going through the process? I told him, I said, there is no process. It's Fall River. Good. I wish they were going to be 12 or more candidates drawn for mayor. Paul Coogan could walk and not run for re-election and leave as a winner rather than leave in January with the well-earned title of loser. These are what people are saying. Are you watching on YouTube?
I am actually watching on YouTube, but I can't see the comments for some reason. But this is the first time I actually got YouTube.
There you go. You're halfway there.
We're halfway there. Maybe next show I'll get the damn comments. But we got half it out of the way. But yeah, listen, this is a circus. I just hope that it doesn't deteriorate into something, because I hope that, we don't get the, it disappoints me when I see a chair officer allowing people to talk, one councilor to argue with another. You got to shut that down. Like at any meeting, you can't, you speak through the chair. You know that, I know that, CJ. You've run meetings, I've run meetings for years. You speak through the chair. You don't have arguments, because that's the way fights break out and the meetings go into complete chaos. You cannot allow that. He allowed that right out of the gate. He should have said, shut it down, or I'll have the both of you escorted out of the chamber.
That's right.
Period.
Don't get me wrong. I like chaos. I love chaos. But
I do too. I like the House of Commons, but unfortunately, the Fall River City Council is supposed to run under Cushing's Rules of Order, not under the House of Commons in Britain.
That's a political bullshit rule of order.
But
that was written by a Massachusetts state legislator to govern how they act. And they've gotten away with it ever since.
Yeah. Well, I think all the expressions, I think it was pretty clear at the last meeting. I would hope that if there is any debate in this meeting, it will be about Paul Coogan's lack of listening to the council, because they did say they wanted a process. Am I incorrect? From what I got, and I was sitting in that meeting, they wanted to have a process, and that was agreed to, supposedly.
That's right.
So I think that, the banter between the police chief and the councilman should not have happened. None of that should have happened. But I think now we're past that. Everybody knows where everybody stands except for Linda. Linda stands wherever the wind blows, and we all know that. She's like a weather vane, giant weather vane. So whatever's going to help Linda and her agenda, that's what she's going to do.
Viewers, give Linda's husband his wish. Don't reelect her. He doesn't want her to serve in office anymore. He wants to move away to Florida and get away from here.
Yeah, give him his wish. But
then we won't have to deal with a missing city councilor 2 or 3 times a year because she's in Florida.
But you know what I'm interested in, CJ, on this one? I'm interested if these rubber stamps for Coogan are even the. Remember how offended Andrew Raposo got when he said he was being interrupted?
Yep.
The answer to that is yes.
Yep.
Yeah, the answer to that is yes. They can't object.
Of course they can.
But
I asked the city councilor to object on Tuesday.
but
They
we
said, why? It's only going to put it off for another meeting.
but if two object, it'll put it off to the next regular meeting. They can't call a special. So,
Right.
but that's the way the charter goes. But I'm wondering if Andrew Raposa, who got so offended when Joe said Joe was interrupting him. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
I wonder if Andrew is going to be upset, and even if he does vote for the chief, at least makes a comment. He and the other two yo-yos, Hart and
Laura
Kilby,
and Laura.
if they have vocal cords. Sometimes I wonder if they have vocal cords, but I'm wondering if they will at least make a statement that they're offended by the fact that Paul Coogan would not have a process after they voted for a process. They won't, because it didn't really care. They voted for a process to end the debate.
That's right.
And they knew damn well that Coogan was not going to have a process, because he's going to pull, he's going to pull his lip like the spoiled child that he is, and do whatever the hell he wants. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So this is the problem we have. And it's our problem. We create it. Not you and I. We vote all the time. You got to get to the polls, people. You got to get to the polls. I don't care who runs. My thing is anybody but Coogan. He's had 3 terms, and he has done 0. He blew over $70 million of opera money, didn't spend 1 red cent for the benefit of the average Fall Riverite, has covered up everything from Malone, DCM, everything in the city is covered up. Matter of fact, I hear there's an issue going on in the school department right now about some harassment that's being covered up. We're still waiting for details on that.
Yeah.
But that may be breaking, and they're going to cover that up. And how about the censure? He did something wrong. And Colin and Kevin Aguirre made a motion to censure him. And that censure was correct.
That's right, it was.
They were right. But they are not
Bobby Bailey,
your representatives.
Shelley Pereira, Mimi Larrabee, all said, no, don't make him upset, no.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, well, he did better than his brother. His brother actually got censured by the fire union after I left and he became president. And then they threw him out after he used his position to get a job. But but the fact is, he was censured. So let's keep it in the family. He should get censured. But that was a valid. I think that was a valid motion. I think he should be censured. Matter of fact, you and I are both in total agreement about the fact that I do not believe that the mayor should be the ex officio chairman of the school committee.
I don't believe the mayor should be on the school committee at all.
I don't care if they supposedly under ed reform have autonomy. They are still the mayor of this city.
That's right.
And the school committee has to go before the city to get approval of their budget. And with him being the chairman of that committee and the mayor of the city, I mean, if that's not a flaming conflict of interest, I've never seen anything like it, especially when you get a mayor like this who's an absolute dictator. I mean, I'm for the Worcester, the Type B charter. We need a city manager. We don't need a mayor. We've seen what this guy has done. I mean, he's basically taken over the city. It's like having the mafia run it.
That's it. That's all it is.
Well, yeah, we have it from a very, very reliable source that there are more harassment allegations coming, or there are harassment allegations that have already been suppressed, from what I've heard.
Right. Because Paul Coogan doesn't want to talk about them.
They've already been suppressed. An opinion has been put down to say there's nothing here to see, and there is something there to see, according to the sources we have, who are fairly reliable. But we will, when we get it and we get proof, we will make it available to the school committeemen that we know we can trust. But this is the city. This is like, it's like being in a mafia over here. I mean, now we've got they can get away with everything they want. People they dislike are immediately, made to walk the plank. And, they're run out of the school department or run out of a job, and you don't toe the mark, you're done. But hey, 14,000 people show up to vote. 12,000 people show up to vote the last 3 elections that Coogan ran. We can't have that again. I mean, I've never seen a mayor with such an abysmal record. I mean, he's done nothing except raise our taxes, raise our water fees, and thank heavens to Cliff Ponte and Michelle Dion for finding that $1.3 million and then stabilizing our water rates. But I don't think that's finished either. No, I will bet you that is resurrected again, and they will get their way ultimately because they're going to flip somebody. Even if they come in after the budget and after the election, if these people get reelected, I will guarantee you they will come back before that city council and get that money back and get the rates they want.
That's right, because that's what they want.
Because this is what you're going to get if you put them back in a city council. And it'll be your fault.
There was once a time in Fall River during an election year, you wouldn't talk about raising a water rate. You wouldn't talk about raising a sewer rate. You wouldn't talk about raising taxes. You cut the budget a little bit and you got reelected. Now the people just don't care anymore because they know they're going to get reelected.
Yeah, because most of the people in the old days, but we remember those days, CJ, we had 60, 65, 70% turnout in elections. And those people all moved away. They all moved to Somerset, Dighton, Rehoboth, Westport, Dartmouth, Tiverton, wherever. They moved.
That's right.
They moved away, and they no longer vote. And as Teddy Roosevelt once said, the reason that one of the primary reasons Rome was destroyed was that the Roman public stopped voting and let their politicians run their government, and they destroyed the empire.
That's it. That's it.
So,
and Patrick, yes, we know the mayor is required as the head of the school committee by state law. We know that. But if we change our charter to a type E charter or a town manager, we don't have a mayor. Therefore, no mayor, he's not there. I love the way.
Well, Patrick, as far as that's concerned, you can change the law.
That's right.
So that law should be changed. Just like there's still an insurance advisory committee in statute, even what? Oh my God, you and I are flipping. Hold it. Yeah, well, they're not showing you that. They only did that for public relations now because they wanted to expedite the transition and make it. And I just hope he sticks to his guns and sues.
So do I. So do I.
Yep. So, but you change laws. Cities who adopt sections 21 through 23 of Chapter 32B on bargaining and establish a public employee committee that represents all the unions should eliminate the insurance advisory committee, which has no power and only represents 7 unions out of a community. It's an archaic and wasted law. And on that particular part of the statute, it requires the mayor to get the retirees representative, not the person who represents the retirees. And right. where 21 through 23 requires them to be appointed by the State Retirees Association, which is the only reason I'm the PEC rep, because, The Bruins would be playing a Stanley Cup game in hell before Coogan ever appointed me to anything again. So
we got a new commenter. Looks like the name is Chicky. Change the law. LOL. They don't even follow mass general law now.
only what? No, I got to disagree slightly. Only when it benefits
Only
them.
when it benefits Paul.
Yeah, only when it benefits the 45-day rule. Remember?
That's right.
Yeah, when the law benefits them, they only be laws to them are discretionary. They're not laws. Like we thought
Exactly.
laws were absolute, but they aren't.
Exactly.
They never follow the law. The only thing they follow is the money.
Yeah. Well, it's been a very interesting and very active show today. People making comments and coming out with some stuff, which is always a wonderful thing to see and hear. I want to thank you all for watching. And remember, stay safe, stay angry, and hold your politicians accountable. We'll see you on Wednesday.